They laughed at him, mocked his uniform, and dismissed him like he was invisible. But what they didn't know, what they never imagined, was that the man they disrespected was the one who held the keys to everything. This isn't just a story about a delivery man. It's a story about truth, humility, and a lesson no one in that restaurant would ever forget. The morning sun hung low over downtown San Diego, casting a golden glow on the polished windows of Maison Vert, the city's most prestigious fine dining spot. In the alley behind it, however, there was no glamour. Just a rumbling truck, a pair of dusty boots stepping onto cracked pavement, and a man with a clipboard, Marcus Ellison. To the untrained eye, Marcus was just another delivery guy. Brown uniform, ball cap, quiet expression. No one gave him a second glance when he pushed his dolly stacked with crates of organic seafood and produce toward the towering steel service door. But inside Marcus's calm demeanor lived a storm, a lifetime of being underestimated. And today he wasn't just making a delivery. As he knocked firmly, he could already hear the laughter inside, casual and cruel. The kind of laughter people reserve for those they think are beneath them. The door swung open. A young sous chef looked him up and down with a smirk. "You lost, FedEx?" "Nope," Marcus said calmly, handing over the invoice. "Fresh delivery for Maison Vert." The chef rolled his eyes. "They're letting anyone in now, huh?" he muttered, not quietly. Marcus said nothing. He just pushed his dolly forward. What they didn't know was that this was his restaurant. Inside Maison Vert, everything gleamed, from the spotless countertops to the mirrored wine shelves. But beneath the shine was a different story, an invisible caste system. Cooks barked at waiters, waiters smirked at barbacks, and everyone looked down on the man with the dolly. Marcus moved through the narrow halls with purpose. His boots squeaked softly against the polished tile. He took in everything, the casual condescension in their voices, the way a hostess turned away with a smirk as he passed. No one greeted him. No one offered to help. Near the prep station, a group of line cooks leaned on counters, whispering and watching. One of them, Scott Bennett, loud and arrogant, nudged the guy beside him. "Bet he couldn't afford to eat here, let alone walk in the front door." Marcus didn't flinch. He was used to it. But every slight, every chuckle, every raised brow was quietly noted. He reached the walk-in fridge and began unloading, crate after crate, neatly stacked. When the head chef, Leah Moreno, stormed by, she didn't break stride. "Make sure you're not in the way," she barked, not even looking at him. Marcus replied, cool and polite, "Yes, chef." But in his eyes, something sparked. By his second trip, the air had shifted. The novelty of the new delivery guy had turned into open mockery. Scott tossed a towel over his shoulder and called out, "Hey, Marcus, you gonna clean up after yourself, or is that above your pay grade too?" A few chuckled. Marcus paused, his hand on a box of halibut. His silence was louder than any comeback. He stared at Scott, then calmly resumed unloading. Leah watched from the chef's station, arms folded. "I don't have time for delays," she snapped. "Get it done fast and out of our way." Marcus finished his round, made no reply, but inside his patience was wearing thin. On his final trip, just as he was stacking the last crate, someone dropped an empty box right beside him with a loud thud. "Oops," said Scott. "Thought you missed a spot." Marcus stood upright, slow and deliberate. "Thanks," he said. "Wouldn't want to disappoint." It was the first time his voice carried weight, enough to draw attention, enough to quiet the laughter, if only briefly. What they didn't know, by sundown the joke would be on them. When Marcus handed over the final invoice, Leah Moreno didn't even look at him. "Just leave it," she said, scribbling her signature without eye contact. Marcus held it a moment longer. "You're welcome," he said flatly. No response. He turned to go, and that's when it came. The final jab. From behind, a snide voice floated out. "Yeah, go back to wherever you came from." The laughter that followed was quiet but vicious. Marcus stopped. He stood there, one hand on the exit bar, his back to the room. A few seconds passed, then slowly he turned around. His gaze swept across the staff, chefs, servers, dishwashers, all now suddenly unsure. He didn't raise his voice, didn't curse. He simply said, "I came here to deliver something you clearly lack. Respect." The room went silent. He left without another word, but the message stayed behind, thick in the air, undeniable. Outside, the sun had risen higher. Marcus stood by his truck, the warmth on his face steadying him. He wasn't angry. He was focused. In 3 hours, he would return to that restaurant, but not as a delivery man. Back in his truck, Marcus pulled out his tablet and opened the agenda for the day. The next item, 3 o'clock p.m. staff meeting at Maison Vert. His title glared from the screen, owner and executive director. He hadn't told anyone, not yet. When he purchased Maison Vert 2 weeks ago, he had one condition. Let him spend a day observing from the bottom before he took the helm. He needed to know what culture he was inheriting. Now he knew. He sat quietly in his parked truck, thinking not just about what happened, but about what needed to happen next. Marcus didn't believe in revenge. He believed in clarity. He believed in leadership by example. He believed in giving people a chance to grow after making them confront their worst assumptions. At exactly 2:55 p.m., he walked back toward the building. Same boots, same uniform. Inside, the staff were already gathered in the main dining hall, confused and annoyed by the sudden mandatory meeting. Marcus opened the side door, and the room turned to look. Whispers rippled through the staff. "Isn't that the delivery guy? What's he doing back here?" Scott crossed his arms, smirking. Leah scowled. Marcus walked with quiet confidence to the center of the room. He stood under the chandelier, the same one that glistened so proudly above the restaurant's elite guests. He scanned the room, meeting every gaze. Then he spoke. "Good afternoon, my name is Marcus Ellison, and as of 2 weeks ago, I am the new owner of Maison Vert." Dead silence. Scott's mouth parted slightly. Leah blinked hard. The manager, Brenda, looked like she'd just swallowed a lemon whole. Marcus let it hang. He didn't gloat, didn't smile. Then he added, "Earlier today, I made deliveries to this restaurant, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I needed to see the team I just inherited, unfiltered." No one dared interrupt. He had their full attention now. Marcus took a slow step forward. "I watched how you spoke to me, how you laughed, whispered, dismissed me. I was wearing a uniform, yes, but so are all of you." He paused. "The difference is, I didn't forget to respect the people I work with." Leah shifted uncomfortably. Scott looked away. Brenda stood rigid, arms at her sides. "You judged me based on appearance, on class, on race, but most of all, on assumptions. And that," Marcus said, "is the problem I came here to fix." Someone cleared their fire remote and no one else moved. He nodded slowly. "We all make mistakes, but we don't all get the opportunity to see them this clearly." Then he added, "Consider this your moment." Marcus stepped toward the kitchen entrance. "I didn't come here today to fire anyone. I came to start something new, but make no mistake, Maison Vert will not operate on entitlement." His voice hardened slightly. "I've scrubbed pots, I've wiped down ovens, I've pulled double shifts on a broken ankle, and I built my reputation, one act of service at a time." His voice dropped to a near whisper. "What did you build today?" Leah looked down. Scott's smirk had long vanished. Brenda opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. "You mocked the delivery man," Marcus said, "but that man owns the kitchen you work in." He pointed at the glass wall facing the street. "That's the window the world sees. But this," he gestured around the room, "is the mirror that matters." After a pause, Marcus said, "If any of you think this place isn't right for you anymore, you're free to leave, no shame. But if you stay, understand this, every role here matters. Every voice, every plate, every prep, every person." A few servers glanced at one another. One cook looked on the verge of tears. "I'm not here to humiliate you," Marcus added. "I'm here to remind you what you're capable of. But it starts with how we treat each other." He turned to Leah. "Chef Moreno, you run a tight kitchen, but precision without compassion? That's not leadership." Leah nodded slowly, swallowing her pride. "And Scott," Marcus said, locking eyes with him, "you've got energy, but if you don't use it to lift others, you're just noise." Scott's jaw clenched, but he gave a faint nod. Marcus looked at them all. "I believe in second chances. This team has one. Use it well." Then he stepped back and said simply, "Meeting's over." He turned and walked out, not storming, not waiting for applause, just steady, like always. Behind him, the silence broke. Whispers, apologies, stunned realization. And something else. Resolve. The staff looked at each other differently now. Something had shifted, not just in power, but in perspective. Outside, Marcus stood under the sun again. He exhaled deeply. The hardest part was over. Now the real work could begin. After the meeting, the dining hall slowly emptied. No one rushed back to their posts. The silence Marcus left behind was heavier than any reprimand. In the kitchen, Leah Moreno leaned over the prep table, eyes fixed on a single tomato she wasn't even cutting. A junior chef beside her finally whispered, "Did you know who he was?" Leah shook her head. "I didn't care who he was." Out by the coffee station, Scott sat on a crate, the same one he had mocked Marcus beside just hours earlier. He rubbed his face. "Man, I acted like a clown," he muttered to a colleague, who nodded in agreement but said nothing. No one wanted to admit it out loud, but they had all seen themselves in Marcus's mirror, and they didn't like what stared back. In the back office, Brenda opened her laptop to review the staff logs, but found her fingers frozen on the keyboard. Her obsession with image had just been shattered by substance. Her mouth was dry, her pride was bruised, and for the first time in years, she wondered if she was even fit for the role she had polished so well. The entire restaurant was quiet, yet full of noise inside. The next day at Maison Vert was different. It wasn't in the way food was plated or tables were set, but in how people moved. They were quieter, more aware. Leah called the kitchen staff in 15 minutes earlier than usual. No shouting, no barking, just instructions. Clear, respectful. One of the line cooks blinked in surprise. "Chef, you feeling okay?" he joked. She didn't smile, but her voice softened. "Let's just do better today. For everyone." Scott showed up with 2 cups of coffee, one for the new dishwasher, Tony, who had barely spoken since he was hired. "Heard you like cream, no sugar?" he asked, handing it over with a faint grin. Tony took it, confused. "Thanks," he said. "Didn't expect that." "Neither did I," Scott replied. In the break room, Brenda gathered the front of house team. "No speech," she began. "Just one thing. From now on, we speak to every guest and every teammate like they're important, because they are." No one cheered, no one clapped. But something had changed. Marcus hadn't demanded apologies, yet everyone wanted to offer one, not just to him, but to each other. For the first time, Maison Vert felt like a team instead of a food machine. Marcus sat at his home office that night, laptop open yet untouched. His phone buzzed twice. Emails about expansion. An invitation to a gala. He ignored them. His mind was still at Maison Vert. He could have fired them. He could have named names, embarrassed them, taken revenge. But that wasn't why he bought the place. He didn't buy it for profit. He bought it because once, when he was 19, he'd been thrown out of a restaurant's back door while delivering flour. They thought he was stealing. He had promised himself then, if he ever made it, he would own a place like that. Not just to prove he could, but to build it differently. His success had come not from stepping over others, but from remembering how it felt to be stepped on. And now, with the power to shape things from the top, he was doing just that. He closed his laptop. He didn't need to post about what happened. The real post was already planted in the minds of everyone who had witnessed it. Change didn't always need hashtags. Sometimes it just needed presence. By midweek, whispers about the delivery man owner began circulating through San Diego's tight-knit restaurant circles. Other chefs, managers, and food critics had caught wind of it. A blog even posted a blind item. Which upscale eatery just got a silent shakeup when its humble new owner walked in unnoticed? It didn't take long for names to surface. The article went viral in hospitality groups. Most people were shocked, but others who knew Marcus weren't. "Classic Marcus," one former colleague tweeted. "Always believe leadership walks in your shoes before it fills them." At Maison Vert, calls started coming in. Customers asked if Marcus would be there during their reservation. A local college invited him to speak on leadership. Even a TV crew left a message asking for an interview. Marcus declined them all. He wasn't interested in fame. He was interested in culture. That Friday night, Maison Vert hosted its first dinner service under the new rules. No more shouting, no more gossip at the pass. Every staff member greeted Marcus with eye contact. And for the first time, they weren't afraid of his title. They respected his walk. A week later, Scott approached Marcus after dinner, rush. His voice was unsure. "Mr. Ellison, can I talk to you a second?" Marcus nodded. Of course. Scott fidgeted with a towel. I've been thinking about that day. What I said. What we said. I'm embarrassed. I acted like a jerk. I guess I thought I was being funny or clever, but I was just being cruel. Marcus listened without interrupting. I never look beyond the surface, Scott admitted. Not with you, not with half the people I work with, and I'm sorry. Marcus studied him. You said what many think, but you're owning it now. That's what matters. Scott exhaled, surprised. Thanks, that means a lot. Marcus offered a small smile. Here's the real test, Scott. Lift up the next person who walks through that door. Scott nodded slowly. I will. And he did. From that night forward, Scott became the guy who backed up the new hires, who calmed down angry customers, who stood up when others stayed silent. One conversation had cracked the shell. The rest was up to him. Leah Moreno stood alone in the kitchen long after close. The burners were off, the counters wiped clean. But her mind wasn't. She stared at her reflection in the steel fridge door. Not at her makeup, not at her chef's coat, but at the expression she wore, the one she didn't like anymore. She thought about how she dismissed Marcus, not just once, but throughout her career. People who didn't fit her image of culinary prestige had always been background noise. Until now. She walked into the office and typed a message to Marcus. Mr. Ellison, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you a better kitchen. I will do better. Not because you're the owner, but because you showed me what a real leader looks like. She didn't expect a reply, but the next morning there was one. Leah, leadership isn't about perfection. It's about humility. Glad to have you in the kitchen. Let's build it right. She sat in her car that morning, phone in hand, eyes watery. For the first time in years, she felt proud, not of what she had cooked, but of what she had learned. A month later, Brenda Klein, the polished manager, handed in her resignation. It shocked everyone until they saw the letter. Maison Vert deserves a leader who didn't spend years valuing appearances over people. I failed to set the tone. Marcus didn't fire me, but I've realized I was never really leading. I was gatekeeping, and that's not who I want to be anymore. Marcus met her in the lobby as she packed her things. Brenda, he said, you could have stayed. She smiled faintly. But I need to go, to grow and to come back different, someday. He nodded. Then go rebuild. That night, Marcus stood in her old office, the nameplate still on the desk. He didn't remove it. He left it as a reminder. People can change, but sometimes they need space to do it. Under Marcus's quiet but intentional leadership, Maison Vert transformed. Staff meetings included all roles, dishwashers to sommeliers. Suggestions flowed both ways. Staff began dining at the restaurant once a month to understand the guest experience. Tips were pooled. Birthdays were celebrated. Even customers noticed. Reviews online mentioned warmth, unity, and humility more than foie gras or crab foam. Marcus stayed mostly behind the scenes. He let the team shine, because his goal wasn't to be the face, it was to shape the soul. Months later, Marcus was invited to speak at a hospitality summit. The crowd expected a speech about business growth. Instead, he began with a story. I once walked into my own restaurant, dressed as a delivery man. What I saw wasn't bad service. It was bad culture. People forgot that every role has dignity. That's what I'm here to change. The room applauded, but Marcus didn't pause for applause. He paused for reflection. Leadership doesn't start in the corner office. It starts in the alley, in the silence, in how you treat the person carrying the box. And with that, he stepped off the stage. Back at Maison Vert, Marcus sat near the kitchen entrance one night, sipping tea. The place buzzed, but not with arrogance, with energy, real energy. Tony the dishwasher waved. Leah called out a thank you. Scott walked past and fist bumped a new hostess. Marcus smiled. The culture had changed, not through a memo, but through a moment. And it all started with one man, one uniform, and one truth. Respect isn't earned by titles. It's revealed by how we treat those we think don't matter. Respect is not about titles or appearances. It's about how we treat people when we think no one is watching. The smallest act of humility can reveal the greatest truth. And sometimes the person we dismiss is the very one shaping our future.